Hi, this is Richard Barrett for Guitarist Magazine, welcoming you to another Blues Headlines. This time I've gone for not one, but two solos in the style of Gary Moore. I wanted to cover a couple of different aspects of his playing, so I'll talk you through that a little bit more later, but for now let's have a listen to those solos. As you'll have just heard, there's a lower gain Fender type sound leading into a higher gain Les Paul type sound. And Gary's later career, he was predominantly playing a Les Paul into a higher gain sound, though I wanted to dial things back a bit to late 70s, early 80s, around the Back on the Streets era, Thin Lizzy's Black Rose album, and his earlier solo career where he was becoming more of a rocker. So I've tried to encapsulate a bit of each. And we should start with lick one. So, for my Fender Strat type sounds, I'm using this Nags Chop Tank bridge pickup, not too much gain. Now, we'll talk a bit about tone later. These pickups are something a little bit special that I'll get into, but it's low gain, and I'm using shape 1 and 2 pentatonic. Here we go. So I've gone straight from shape 1 into shape 2 of the A minor pentatonic, and for my vibrato, rather than going, which is of course perfectly valid, I wanted to demonstrate how Gary at this point would use the arm quite a lot for this. It's quite a caricature really, but it was very, I don't know, maybe a bit Jeff Beck or something like that. I know he's big fan of Jeff Beck. So that's the first part of the lick, and then I've given it a full stop there. That was on a whim really, and we are staying in this shape 2 territory. Slightly paraphrasing there, but you can see the box shape. And that is the end of that lick. We're getting ready now for lick 2. For the second phrase, I've returned to the shape 1 A minor pentatonic, here based around the 5th to 8th frets. We've just had a pause after lick 1, and I'm sliding back up. You can hear a lot of handling noise there because I'm really giving this arm some welly. That's there in the track as well. It's covered by the bass and drums. And I think sometimes with Gary's playing, a bit of handling noise adds to the effect rather than taking away from it. So that first, now that ending lick is something that we'll probably be talking about into the second solo as well. It's a technique that Gary used a hell of a lot, and I am playing triplet patterns, but I'm not picking them, because that would sound a bit stiff and a bit too picky, too many impacts on the string. Instead, I'm playing triplets. It's quite legato. So let's have a look at an exercise that you can build that up with. And I'm... So this right hand, I'm angling the pick slightly upwards towards me because that seems to make the whole thing easier and I don't get as caught up in the strings. So you may find yourself wanting to replay that little bit of video just to see exactly what's going on. But the first 3 notes are 1 downstroke and a hammer-on. And then the reverse. Okay, We'll be talking a bit more about that technique, so for now I'm going to move on to the second solo, lick 3. As you'll see, I've changed guitar. I've also changed the amp settings and pedal settings a little bit. I'll talk about that later, but we are a much higher gain tone now. Bridge pickup, bridge humbucker. And this is more like Gary's live approach, and certainly from the early 80s onwards, things became a little bit more rock, though obviously his playing is very bluesy. The first part of this solo is more about holding in-tune bends and introducing vibrato only when you want it, sometimes deliberately not using vibrato, and that can be a challenge. So let's have a look at exactly what I'm playing here. It's up here. I would call this a shape 4 A minor pentatonic. Now the chords underneath do change. We go from A minor to E minor. So as the chord changes, I change this shape 4 to a shape 1 E minor pentatonic. So it's subtle, but it's in there just to reflect the chord change. Something like this. Now, you have to get very good at riding the guitar volume with this kind of gain at any sort of volume, because it will just scream. And if you watch Gary playing live, you'll see he's always turning it off and on. So. So there's not too much going on there. Slightly out of tune bend, apologies. So I don't think I need to say too much more about that, except just watch the pitching and watch the vibrato. You don't always want to be using vibrato by default. We should move on to lick 4. In this final phrase, lick 4, I'm going to show you the approach behind the flurry at the end. We're staying with the shape 1 A minor pentatonic, and as I stressed earlier, these licks don't need to be the same every single time. It's faithfully transcribed in the magazine, but I want to show you the approach so that you don't feel that you're having to copy. I think that makes it seem a lot harder, to be honest. So I'll talk you through. Very similar to the final phrase of the first solo, but I've played a few more licks here. So I'm going to talk you once more through again the right hand, really. You can see, here's a hint, that last bit. I'm brushing across the strings. So the basic technique, which I'll demonstrate again here, is the idea that as you go across the strings, you just follow through with a single downstroke of the pick, and when you come back up, you do a similar movement. So you're getting double value from each pick stroke, and you get the hammer-ons as well, which help speed you up. So I hope that you can see that. That's basically, rather than trying to pick every single note, I'm using legato and using brushing motions across the string. I think it will probably make a lot more sense when you have a guitar in your hands and you're trying to do it. So I've changed guitar again, back to my Nags chop tank. We're plugged into the JTM 45 head behind me, and I'm using Boss Super Overdrive. I haven't really got any gain on it. I've just put the level about halfway. It's more to focus the low end than it is to add a lot of gain, though this pedal does add a little bit of hair, as you might say. I've gone bridge pickup here, and I did say I wanted to mention these. These were made for me by Stu from Sun Bear Pickups, and he's calling these broad strat. This is a little bit more like a Telecaster Broadcaster pickup. And these also have a few of those qualities, though I've put covers on just because it goes with the rest of the hardware. But so I'm not relying on gain to get any sustain or anything. These are just everything's wide open and a little bit of extra gain. So another guitar change, back to the Nags SSC, bridge pickup. Now on the amp, I've turned the high treble gain up a bit, lost a little bit of low end just to keep things focused, and I've driven things a little bit harder with the super overdrive, which helps focus the low end a bit more. And that's really what the tube screamers and the super overdrives were for, and that's the reason they chop off so much. And Gary was a big fan of that kind of pedal. So we've got a lot of gain here. I can't quite turn it up as loud as Gary would have done, but I'm sure that gives you the idea. So I hope that this has been helpful. You may find that there are certain things that you want to watch a few times, especially about that picking. Any comments obviously are welcome, and I'll try and answer any questions that come up. But for now, I hope you enjoy it. Let's have another listen to the solo.